I'll ask a question.
Okay.
A couple of the speakers mentioned that the open source systems that you're working on are aimed especially at the humanities. And just from a technical standpoint, in what way is that orientation distinct from, less rigorous than, more complicated than an STM-oriented platform might be?
Just very briefly, I mean, we started in the humanities, so low cost was very important for us, but otherwise, they're equally, the processes are the same, the rigor is the same. It was really a matter of the fact that a more expensive system would have been too high a barrier for scholars in the humanities.
I'll just say that in many ways, the humanities and social sciences, are a core of serving the humanities and social sciences are a core of what Editoria is all about, honestly, because the humanities and social sciences, or at least many of the softer social sciences, tend to be book-based disciplines. And so they do publish journal articles, but in many cases, a historian really can't get tenure without publishing a book. And so it's critical. A lot of university presses are more heavily weighted towards books than they are towards journals. So the fact that we needed to build a book production platform, was motivated very heavily by the fact that we were involved in humanities and social sciences publishing.
Hi, I'm Abe Novick. I'm with Johns Hopkins University Press and Project Muse. Project Muse is the electronic platform offering books and journals from various presses from all over the world. So we've been around about 20 years, so perhaps we're a legacy press. The Muse has been around. Hopkins Press has been around much longer than that. My question is the economics of open access. We're about to launch an open access platform on Muse, and we're developing it it should be live in 2018. We're turning to the publishers to provide us with their open access content. So not everything will be open access, but we're going to offer it. There's some open access now. But my question to the panel, and perhaps you can incorporate this in, is sustaining a business, sustaining a model, and making it work so that we can all eat on a regular basis. That would be helpful if you could kind of talk a little bit about that and how you've done that.
Eric, if you could speak to the open access book publishing, but before you do, I want to just make a quick distinction that the sustainability models for open source software are distinct from open access publishing. And from just speaking as an open source provider, we see our sustainability as a membership basis, with the membership fees coming from those who build their business on top of the software, which is a very different way of thinking about software development from the way we've done before, but it's also completely distinct from open access publishing, which I will be interested to hear Eric's response on how the press has been approaching their open access books.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's an important distinction that Kristen makes, because I think that open source software can play a role in open access publishing, both for books and journals, and particularly a role in potentially bringing down those costs. But in terms of a sustainability model, I won't go too deeply into it, but I mean, with the Luminos program, what we had to do is we had to build out a P&L for every title that reflected the cost of open access publishing. And there is open access, somebody pays, right? So in our case, we had to develop sort of a minimum funding model for every title that we published open access. And as we built the P&L for those titles, hosting fees, editorial production expenses, all of those things are factored into the P&L for that title. Those expenses don't go away just because you're publishing something open access. So, you know, if you know, Muse, for instance, is getting into the open access hosting game, then I assume that there's going to be a cost recovery mechanism that's built into that. There certainly is for a lot of other open access, you know, hosting providers. And publishers are going to have to think about how they deal with those cost recovery mechanisms, you know, for Muse, for, you know, other people who are hosting that content. So.
Yep.
Go
ahead, Bill.
I don't need to use the mic, I don't think. I just want to make the obvious point that since this is really about open source, you can use open source software to make a proprietary system.
Yeah. You can use open source software to make a proprietary system. You can use open source software to serve non-open access publications. You know, just because they both share the word open really doesn't mean that there's a direct one-to-one. And in fact, you know, from the perspective at COCO, we hope people take what we're building and create proprietary commercial solutions. I mean, this is like, if people are able to use the software that we're building to build a business, that's success. And in fact, we hope to seed an ecosystem in which lots of people are building lots of interesting things, and other people are pulling those things together and creating service offerings on multiple levels. And that we think that over time that will have a transformative effect on the industry. Now, that being said, as the open source provider, we hope that people are good citizens within our open source project and contribute back in to some amount of maintenance there, not just sort of take the code and run, but actually be part of the community and play a role in the roadmap development and be a member of that community. But build a profitable business off of it, absolutely. And that's where the success comes from. That's why I opened with that OpenStack example. Is, you know, this is IBM and AT&T. You know, they are building very profitable businesses off of that shared infrastructure. And I think that we in our industry can learn a lot from that, and not necessarily see it as a sort of single solitary way of doing technology that only serves nonprofit or only serves open access. It really can do a lot more than that. Okay, so we have only a few minutes. Should we just wait and do this after the break?
Can I just add just one response to that?
Yeah.
Just a very small semantic tweak to that. You can't use open source software to build a proprietary system. Open source software can be components of a larger system that might have proprietary components within it. It's just a small thing to differentiate because the code itself is, copyright exists everywhere, and open source is a licensing agreement. So the copyright exists somewhere in editorial's sake with UCP, and then you can grab that and put your own components in there because it's a license for you to do what you wish, but you can't change the copyright license that UCP has given to you. So, yeah.
I guess thanks for the correction. I should have not said open source software to build a proprietary system. I should have said open source software for proprietary ends. And the more people that do that, the better that free open source software gets.
Yeah, and I should have said proprietary. What I meant was commercial. True. I mean, so you can take the open source software and build a commercial solution.
But the software is still open source. But
the licensing of the software, yeah. So that's the right point to make, Adam. And I think that's the key. And once you get past that, and this is happening all the time. I mean, I worked at Adapon Systems, and I don't know if there's anybody from Adapon here, but when I was there, it was a long time ago, but we were using lots of open source components. And that was just a great way to kind of bootstrap the development. So it's common practice across lots and lots of different technology providers. It's just we haven't really dug into what it could do in scholarly publishing, I think, in a thorough way. So what do you think on timing? It's really almost time for the break. Should we just go ahead and then have Adam go after the break?
On your way out, those of you who did not check in with